Hello. Oh, fuck. Oh. So what am I here talking about tonight? Oh, yes. Season 1 of the Disney Plus show, Loki. The third Marvel TV show they've released this year after WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which I've already reviewed. You can go back and watch those if you want to, or not if you don't want to, whatever. So what is it about? Well, it's about the character Loki, played by Tom Hiddleston, if you hadn't guessed. If you're familiar with the movies, you know that his character died in Avengers Infinity War, which is the second to last Avengers movie. But, because of time travel shenanigans, the Avengers accidentally set it up that he got his hands on that a past version of Loki, after they defeated him when he first attacked New York in the first Avengers movie, he ended up getting his hands on the Tesseract cube thing that allowed him to teleport away. That happened in the movie Avengers Endgame. That's where this show picks up from there, with that version of Loki. He teleports to Mongolia, and which is weird because it's a teleporting thing. You think you would control where you teleport. He seems to be completely confused about where he is. So it's just kind of strange. Well, when he teleports to Mongolia, he's all of a sudden confronted by these group of people, these weird soldier type people from a group called the TVA. The soldiers are referred to as Minutemen, but they represent the TVA, which stands for the Time Variance Authority. Loki is then taken prisoner and brought to the Time Variance Authority's headquarters, where he basically gets a crash course in the TVA's founding. That once upon a time there was multiple timelines or multiple realities, and they went to war with each other over something until a group of powerful beings called the Timekeepers, these three powerful beings called the Timekeepers, decided to somehow make it that there was only one timeline, and they created the Time Variance Authority to make sure it stays that way. That there's only one set path that the timeline must stay on. And if anyone deviates from it, that's where the TVA steps in. A variant, it's called a variant when someone steps off their destined path. Loki stepped off his destined path when he teleported away after the fight, because we already know how his story is supposed to end. Loki is charged with crimes, and for being a variant, because apparently you can be a variant just by making a different decision than you supposedly should. But this whole should thing isn't your decision. So the whole concept of the TVA is completely subverting free will. Utterly and completely. And you don't even realize it, because you don't even know you made a mistake until you made it, and you just thought you were making your own choices. It's utterly insane and ridiculous. So the choice can be simply something benign as you didn't go to work, but it could also be something as extreme as you were born as a completely different person. Like, this show is full of various variants of Loki. There's of course the Loki we know, Tom Hiddleston, but then there's also a female Loki called Sylvie. We'll get to that, actually. What happens is He's charged with a crime that he doesn't even know he's being charged with. He finds out he can't use his powers at the TVA. And then one of the TVA's, they have basically these agents who are hunters who go hunt people down, but they also have analysts whose job it is to analyze timelines to try to figure out where variants are so they can go hunt them. They have an analyst called Mobius M. Mobius, who's played by Owen Wilson, who basically steps in and saves Loki from being reset, whatever the hell that means. They use all these terms, but they don't give a clear definition of what they mean. But when they take the variant out of the timeline, apparently the variant just being there already causes a branch, so they put down these weird little bombs that basically destroy everything. I don't know if it's the whole world, but basically they eliminate the branch so the timeline can just continue. Loki is saved by Mobius, who actually shows him how his life was supposed to go if he hadn't teleported away at the end of the fight, if he hadn't become a variant and changed his history. And Loki ends up seeing the whole thing, even to the point of his death, about how his mother dies, his father dies. He and Thor actually managed to find some peace with each other and become almost familial again. And then Loki dies trying to kill Thanos. But that's neither here nor there. It's all kind of like this weird interrogation / therapy session, because Mobius is trying to figure Loki out because he wants Loki's help with a job they have, because they're having a problem with another variant. Turns out this variant is another Loki variant. Loki helps Mobius figure out where the variant is and where where they're hiding. They're hiding in end of the world scenarios, basically what they call apocalypse scenarios. Situations where if not the whole world ending, but at least a place where everybody dies. Some sort of disaster wipes everyone out in a certain area. This Loki is hiding in these places because they figure out that you can't cause a variation in these places. You can't cause a branch in a place that's about to be destroyed, because it's already going to be wiped out anyway, so nothing matters. So they find this Loki in one such place, and they discover that it's a female variant of Loki. Remember I said that sometimes the Lokis can be wildly different. This is a female variant of Loki who calls herself Sylvie. She's trying to kill the Timekeepers. Loki fucks it up. They end up trapped on this weird moon where that's going to be destroyed. They have no. The TVA teleports to these little, almost like cell phone looking things called temp pads, and they have no temp pad. And it looks like they're going to get stuck there. They go on a little mini adventure together. And it looks like Loki is developing feelings for his female counterpart because he's a fucking narcissistic ego monster. And they end up getting saved by the TVA because them actually developing feelings for each other creates this really weird alternate timeline branch. You think just two variant Lokis being together in the same place would do that, but I guess not. But somehow it's a weird enough branch that it actually shows in a place that's about to be destroyed, which is so bizarre. But the TVA finds them. And that's when you learn that things are being hidden. Because Sylvie has different powers from Loki. Loki's powers are mainly based on creating illusions. Sylvie's powers are based around enchantment. She can get in people's heads and get them to do what she wants, even completely mind controlling them or almost possessing them. And in doing so, she finds out that the Minutemen, all the agents of the TVA, are actually themselves variants who, instead of being eliminated from the timeline, were just brainwashed and recruited into the TVA. Loki reveals this to Mobius, who finds out that things are not going the way he thought they were at the TVA. He discovers that they killed one of these an agent who had also discovered the truth, because when Sylvie gets in a person's head, she makes them remember their past life, and it makes them realize that, oh, this isn't this is a lie. Mobius figures it out and decides to get Loki to help him, but before he does, his boss catches him trying to release Loki and prunes him with these little staffs they have that basically, it looks like they're disintegrating people. Loki and Sylvie are then taken before the Timekeepers, and a hunter that Sylvie had enchanted helps Loki and Sylvie escape, and they then fight the Minutemen, and Sylvie chops off the head of one of the Timekeepers. Turns out it's like an animatronic thing. It's just a machine. So they realize the whole Timekeeper story is a fucking lie. And just as Loki's about to reveal that he's has feelings for Sylvie, he gets pruned from the timeline from this fucking what the fuck is her name? Ravina something. She's the lady who seems to be in charge, like almost like a second in command of the TVA. And Sylvie manages to get the staff away from her and take her captive. And it looks like she's gonna get answers out of her, but the boss lady is just stalling. And we find out that when someone gets pruned, they actually don't die. They get sent to this sort of like void at the end of time where nothing continues anymore anyway. So everything they prune, all the people and timelines they prune, just gets sent to this place like a dumping ground for unwanted timelines. And there, Loki discovers more Lokis. The first he discovers are these 4 other Lokis. He discovers classic Loki, or old man Loki, who looks like the way Loki originally looked in the comic books back in the 60s. He discovers also Kid Loki, which was a version of Loki from the comic books where Loki was brought back from the dead as a kid. There's a black Loki with a hammer. I don't recall there being any version of Loki that looked like that. And there's an alligator Loki. It's just a small alligator with a Loki helmet. There is also no comic book version of that. Also, the female version of Loki, Sylvie, is based on at least 3 different things that I know of. There was a point where Loki became a woman by possessing Sif's body. There was another time that Loki just turned into a woman for a while because he just wanted to. And it's also based on a knockoff version of the Enchantress, which explains her enchanting powers, called Sylvie, that Loki created. So it's kind of a merging of all these things together to create this new character. Okay, so we met these other 4 Lokis. So while Sylvie's trying to figure out what's going on at the TVA, and she's being played by the judge lady, Sylvie ends up pruning herself just so she can get away. And the judge lady was being lied to. She thought the Timekeepers were a real thing, and she realized she's being lied to. So she decides to look into where somebody runs the TVA. Where is this person? She wants to find them. We get the feeling she wants to find them because maybe she wants to take over the TVA. Who knows? In the void, Loki hooks up with these other Lokis. He tries to get them to help. He gets her stories about how their variations happen, and he tries to get them to help him. Because also at the end of the time, there's this giant a monster called Goliath. This is where the story got a little lame to me because it's a giant smoke monster. I hate that fucking innocuous smoke monster shit. What is this, fucking Lost? Because you didn't have the balls to fucking pull off an actual fucking monster? Fucking lame ass horse shit. But whatever. Those four Lokis don't want to help Loki, so he decides to leave. When he leaves, he gets confronted with a whole other group of Lokis being led by what looks like a version of President Loki, which was something from the comic books, because at one point Loki, as a trick, decided to try to run for president of the United States. I think it was a mini-series, but there was a President Loki. Although no, he never actually became president, but he was dressed like somebody who was running for president. Then in the bunker, Loki has to sit there and watch as all these different Lokis just start backstabbing each other left and right, and he's just sitting there like he's embarrassed with himself. He's like, oh my god, is this what I'm like? Just constantly backstabbing and untrustworthy completely. And during the ensuing fight and chaos, he and Kid Loki, Old Man Loki, and Alligator Loki manage to sneak away, where they agree to take him to Goliath, but they're not going to do anything past that. When they get to Goliath, when Sylvie showed up in this void place, she was saved by Mobius. She then convinced Mobius that they need to go confront it. She and Loki run into each other, and they have sort of an awkward hello. Then they talk a little bit, and you can see it's kind of weird, like he doesn't want to completely admit his feelings for her yet. Then they have like a weird goodbye. They say goodbye to Mobius. They give him the temp pad that Sylvie had, and he goes back to the TVA to decide to confront everything there. And then Loki and Sylvie decide to confront Goliath. The whole plan is Loki distracts Goliath while Sylvie makes contact with Goliath and tries to enchant it. But it doesn't quite work that way, because Goliath seems far more interested in Sylvie than Loki. And that's when Old Man Loki steps in and projects this huge illusion to attract Goliath's attention. And that's when Loki and Sylvie together join their power to enchant him as a team. And in doing so, they take control of Goliath, and they get him to clear the way, and you see that past this void they're in, at the very end of time, there's some kind of weird, like, mansion or castle type thing. Oh, boy. Boy, oh, boy. Now, at the end of in this weird while they enter the castle, fortress, citadel, whatever you want to call it, they enter this place. Mobius confronts his old boss, and they have a little argument, and then Mobius reveals that he revealed to the other Minutemen that she's been lying, that they're all variants, which apparently she knew all along. She claims to feel hurt and betrayed by Mobius, even though it's like, bitch, you were brainwashing people to control the timeline as if you had any sort of fucking right. Fuck you. And she manages to escape somewhere. Nope, they didn't quite specify where. In the Citadel, Loki and Sylvie travel further inside. Now, a lot of people thought who was going to be behind all this was Kang. I didn't think it was going to be Kang. I didn't think they would blow their wad like that. It's like, Kang's going to be a villain in the new Ant-Man movie. He's probably going to be a major villain going forward, maybe similar to the way Thanos was in the preceding phases of movies. We'll see. He definitely could be. So I didn't think they would introduce him here. But then, as they get in, they find somebody, and it is him. Kind of. Now, this might just be me wanting to save face and not admit I was wrong, but I'm not completely wrong. Let's try to understand Kang the Conqueror a little bit. Kang the Conqueror is a major character. He's being played by, I think, the actor's name is Jonathan Majors. He was that guy from Lovecraft Country. I probably should have looked it up. He's a fine actor. I have no problem with him in the performance, but that's who's playing him. Kang is white in the comic books, but it doesn't really fucking matter. Kang's a time traveler who originally comes from the 31st century. He's a archaeologist in the 31st century who discovers an ancient alien ship in Egypt hidden inside a sphinx. When he starts investigating this weird alien ship, he accidentally activates something and he gets teleported back in time to ancient Egypt, where using his intelligence and advanced technology, he ends up being worshipped as a pharaoh, calling himself Ramatut. He eventually has to abandon that, and he travels farther forward in time, even past where he originally came from, where he finds the Earth has been basically destroyed and is now under the control of roving gangs of aliens. He then takes over these gangs of aliens and becomes ruler of the world. That's where he takes on the personality of Kang. He goes from Ramatut to calling himself Kang. So now we already have two versions of these characters, and because he's a time traveler, these characters can show up or exist at any given time. They can exist concurrently. It's all so weird. But we're not done yet. There's more versions of Kang. At one point, he came back in time. Oh, shit. At one point, he came back in time and revealed his future to a younger version of himself. His younger version of himself rejects his villainous future and decides to take Kang's armor and technology and starts calling him, and travels into the past and calls himself Iron Lad and creates a team of teen superheroes. He eventually realizes he has to go back. He has to maintain the timeline or it would fuck everything up. Yeah, so now we have Iron Lad. That's the third one. But there's another one. There's a future version of Kang who lives at the end of time and considers himself sort of the master of time. This guy is called Immortus. Now, he and Kang have not always been on the same time. Sometimes they've been adversarial, even though they're technically the same person, because one's an older version. Because it's time travel and shit, you can create alternate realities and alternate versions of yourself. It's also confusing. But my point is, the guy that we saw in the show wasn't Kang. That was a version of Immortus. That's who we saw at the end of Loki. Loki and Sylvie talked to Immortus. They never used the name Morris, but they also never used the name Kang either. So it's amazing how much superhero movies are scared of actually revealing superhero shit. They talk to Immortus. Sylvie tries to kill Immortus, but he's able to teleport away because he already knows what they're going to do before they do it. He kind of reveals that they didn't really have free will, that he knew all of this is going to happen. He then reveals the true story of what happened. The whole bullshit about the timekeeper was just that bullshit. Once upon a time, some version of himself managed to travel through time, as did then other versions of himself. And they sort of met each other, and they talked to each other and worked together until they had some weird big falling out, and a universal war, a multi-universal war actually did occur. But this version of Kang, or Immortus, he figured out a way to stop it by eliminating all the other alternate realities. The Universal War started because all these different versions of Kang ended up meeting each other. So he decided to put an end to that. So there was only one version of himself and only one timeline left, and that's why he created the TVA to maintain that. Um, so yeah, it's Mortis. He explains the history of the TVA, and Mobius has it out with his boss, who ends up escaping after everything is revealed. Uh, Immortus reveals that they now have reached a point where he doesn't know what's going to happen next. So he basically tells Sylvie and Loki, he's like, you have two options. You can either A, go back and run the TVA in my place now because you know so much, or you could kill me, let the singular universe collapse, and see what happens with a new multiverse appears. Because what'll happen is this villainous version of him that he's scared of, Kang, will show up and will start making things awful. Sylvie goes to attack him, but Loki tries to stop her, basically saying, hey, can we just think about this for a second? He's like, I get you want vengeance, I get you want this to happen, but it's like, maybe we should just consider this for a moment. Then Loki and Sylvie fight, and then they actually kiss at one point, and Sylvie kicks Loki back through a time gate that she opens with some of Immortus's technology, and then she kills Immortus and basically takes this weird temp pad wrist thing that he has, and it's like, well, is she now guardian of time and space? But so she kills Immortus, and it looks like she's going to take his place at the end of time. And you're just like, alright, well, what's going to happen next? It's going to create new branches. Loki manages to go back to the TVA, where they're dealing with now this new exponential growth of new fucking branches everywhere they fucking go. Not to mention many of them are... Wait, what am I talking about? I'm sorry, I got confused there for a second. Yeah, so Sylvie's now at the end of time. Loki goes back to the TVA. He finds Mobius and tries to warn him. He's like, we found him. He's behind all of this. I know why there's all these new realities that are popping up. And it looks like Mobius doesn't know who the fuck Loki is. And then Loki starts looking around and realizes the statues of the timekeepers that used to be there are now replaced by statues of Kang. So, in that short time he was gone, Kang managed to completely rewrite history that now he's in charge of the TVA. So they're just fucked. So now Loki has to actually start from scratch with fucking Mobius and the TVA in general. And it's just like, alright, what the fuck am I doing here? So yeah, that's where it left off. With Loki back to square one with the TVA and now having to figure out how to fight an even bigger threat of Kang. But at least he has answers to his questions of who's behind the TVA. But it's like, how's he going to deal with this now? Will they arrest him because they don't know who the fuck he is? Will Loki and Sylvie ever get together again? I'm going to assume yes on that one. But yeah, it was a good show. Um, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed Tom Hiddleston. I enjoyed the actors. I enjoyed the story. The whole time travel aspect was really weird and really good. They keep upping the antes with these Marvel shows, and it's excellent. So yeah, this is definitely a 2 thumbs up TV show. I highly recommend it. Loki, good shit. I hope that made sense. I can't even remember if I said everything correctly, but I guess we'll see when I go back to re-edit this. So I think that's good for me. Have a good one. Until next time.